Rose was helping me 2 or 3 years ago when we were doing a program in Milwaukee where we were trying to put together regional teams to talk about early childhood development, early child care and education as the pivotal regional economic development issue. And it doesn't surprise me that my hometown understands it and is the first in the state to do such a huge thing. So I applaud you. I do. Our area Congressman Steve Kagan held an economic development summit in August. And it was a most interesting group of provocative speakers on a wide array of issues that have an impact on economic development for our region. And he was gathering information with new technology, so asking questions and pulling in feedback. And this is the lesson that he got over and over. When he posed the question to the participants, business leaders, education leaders, etc., what's the most significant roadblock to economic development in our region? The answers that tied for first place were, and I'm being honest here, lack of cooperation from government. We're working on that, and workforce availability. When asked what is the region's greatest asset, the #1 answer by a huge factor over 2 to 1, human capital. When asked what's the first step in attracting new business to our region, the #1 answer, again by a huge margin, a skilled workforce. A workforce is the central, a skilled workforce is the central issue for us as we think about our economic outlook. And when we think about our economic outlook and how do we build that workforce and draw it and attract it and hold on to it, the bright young people, as when I read a big study of CEOs for American cities called The Young and the Restless in a Knowledge-Based Society, and what moves them through, have child care if you want the bright young families to come and locate here, and the businesses will follow. If you want their children to be the next generation that is supplying the workforce that you need for those businesses to grow, then you have to do it. And I've heard this. I was so pleased to meet the director of the Committee for Economic Development here today because I quote them often. These are national business leaders who have known this and who are talking about the importance of doing it. And it shouldn't be a difficult argument. Scientists, so much has become available to us in the study of the brain and human development, and there is nothing more efficient, both biologically and economically, than to address birth through age 5 and get it right at the beginning rather than fix it later, because of course 85% of who we are is determined by age 5. And you will hear this over and over again, but I don't think we can say it too often. Let's lean on the authority of Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman, his maxim is the best evidence supports the policy prescription, invest in the very young. And he maintains that neglecting the early years creates an underclass that is arguably growing in the United States at great expense. We can see here with and I have spoken about this often, having been in Green Bay for so many years and watched in the last decade and a half maybe the incredible change in the population and the demographics, that kind of introduction of diversity into a population in a historical blink of an eyelash, if we don't address the opportunities for those children early on with the best care from birth through 5, and then at the other end of it have the doors of our university and technical colleges open to them as well, we're going to end up, like the city of Milwaukee, with hardened lines of socioeconomic segregation, and we can't afford it here. The science basis for the argument then is moving very quickly. The economic analysis is following. Art Rolnick from the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis has done tremendous work and made that research available. And the demand for workforce is clear. Now it's up to us to close the gap between what we know and what we do. And the question is, if we know all of this about brain development and we know that workforce is an issue that is so important, then why aren't we doing this? And why aren't we making sure that all children birth through 5 have access to the highest quality care and education? It's like having the Salk vaccine for polio sitting on the table and saying, oh, I'm so sorry, this is a time of scant resources and maybe next year our budget will allow this. This is knowledge that should burden public policy. If we don't if we don't pay attention to building a foundation for emotional, social, and cognitive development, if we don't correct our course, the American century will dissolve into the Chinese century. To increase the number of those with a baccalaureate degree, which we know and have identified as an important goal for us in Wisconsin, we have to increase the number of children who are poised to accomplish that. China and India graduate 500,000 engineers a year, the United States 60,000. Our work is ahead of us. So Wisconsin businesses thinking growth better think workforce development, how to recruit and retain young families, how to attract and keep women in the workforce, or that head-on crash with a sure workforce crisis is coming toward us like a speeding train, and the effects will be devastating. And we in the United States really need to look beyond our borders, beyond other states, to other countries, where children are seen to be a public resource and women's contributions more highly valued in the economy. In the European Union, the press is on to boost women's workforce participation because they need it, and to foster stable growth. So their primary strategies are to improve child care facilities and to make sure that they are affordable and accessible to all. In Chile, employers of 20 or more have to provide free care to children under the age of 5. So today you'll have the luxury of hearing leading thinkers right from here in Green Bay, Dan Nearad, for instance, from a statewide level, the Superintendent of Schools, Libby Burmaster, and Roberta Gassman, our Secretary of Workforce Development. At the national level, David Lawrence and others. But your expertise needs to come into this mix if we're going to map out strategies that will specifically be successful in this region, if we're going to really harvest the wisdom of this group. It's not a question of business doing the right thing, but finding the right thing to do. And that calls for understanding the context in which we all operate, designing a strong strategic plan for this region that builds in and on the strengths of the area institutions and the government partners and imagines new partnerships that aren't there. There are lots of models that are going on in Minnesota. There's the MinBell business for early education that have made it a priority to create scholarships for young children birth through 5 to get access to it. Chicago Metropolis 2020, which harvests the talents of retired executives to help look at quality of life issues, has made this a priority, and they have been successful in getting tens of millions of dollars in state appropriations to early child care education and building from that point of view. The New North ought to understand this. I see Kathy Seifert is here, who has provided tremendous wise leadership there for this entire region if we're going to attract and hold on to the people that we need. Early care and childhood education is the pivotal issue. The data is in, the cost of remediation outweighs the investment today, and so we have work to do. We need all of us to be champions to stand up for young children. And responsible management of our nation's future demands new and imaginative partnerships and our willingness to wade into the politics of budget decisions so that we can close the gap for our children and build a policy framework for bipartisan cooperation. I see State Senator Rob Coles and Representative Jim Seletsky are both here with me. We want to support the decisions that you make and work with you as partners from the Capitol and address this workforce crisis head on from the very beginning with our children in view at the center of the frame. Thank you for your important work today.